Okay, great. Did we all get that little robot voice saying recording in progress? Good. Okay, let's carry on. Cool. So we're just going to start off with some introductions. So my name is Daniela Finch, and I work as Senior Programs Officer at Groundwork London on the Grants Administration team. So my role is that I am here to support each person on their journey within this funding programme. So my role includes running these workshops, a main point of contact for applicants to answer any questions you might have. I would also provide support to grantees who are eventually funded on the programme, checking in, reporting, those kinds of things. Yeah, basically just here to help make your projects a success. And I will hand over to my colleague Jed now to introduce himself.
Thanks, Danielle. I think everyone knows me actually at the meeting, which is
Oh, there we go.
yeah, hi Paul and David. Can see both here, and obviously Fiona and Thea work with me on the project as well.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll just give a little overview of the project. Although I think you've both got a reasonable idea of what we're doing, but perhaps the people who watch it later as well. I guess actually before I start on the project, I might tell a little story of how this innovation fund came about. So we've got a PhD attached to the project, and with the Open University, the Claude, who's our PhD student, he's looking at how you measure and define resilience within a community, particularly to flooding, and then how the interaction of communities and government bodies, such as ourselves, affects resilience. So that's the concept of his PhD, and he's looking at two case studies. We're one case study, and the other one is in Uganda. And he went to Uganda last year to do his research there. And when he came back, presented what he'd found over there, and it was really quite striking. So in Uganda, they'd the kind of central government equivalent of the Environment Agency over there had given quite a significant amount of money to do natural flood management at a catchment scale, natural flood management delivered in this particular rural community. And whereas here, the way we would do that, as someone like myself in this kind of role, we would, design a scheme, get consultants in, consult the community. We're doing this on Project Groundwater. It's like a top-down approach. What they did there was basically give that lump of money to the community right at the bottom level and say, within some parameters, but basically say you do it, you decide what you want to do, you deliver it, you manage it, which gave a massive ownership to the community of what they did there, and it was really good delivery as well. What they ended up building there, so that kind of got me thinking. Couldn't we be a bit more like this? This is an innovation project. We're supposed to be trying different things. Couldn't we do something like that? And obviously, within the kind of rules and the law and everything else you have to work with when you're dealing with public money, I couldn't do that. I couldn't just give like, I don't know, half of my budget to the pilot community and say you decide what you want to do with it. It wasn't feasible. So, but what we could do is set up an innovation fund. And so some of the principles of what I've tried to do here is keep it as open as possible. So that's why I've not tried to be as non-prescriptive as we can with this. So yeah, if you want to go to the next slide for me, Danielle, give a bit of an
Yeah, sure thing.
or can I
Yes.
dive, or do you
My screen is a little bit. I'm just going to quickly go over the agenda for the workshop before we kind of dive in a bit more into it. So we've touched on this, but we'll start with welcome and introductions. We've also touched on this, but we'll tell you more information about the Project Groundwater Innovation Fund. Some information on what kind of groups, what kind of people can apply, what kind of funding is available, and what we're looking to fund, what the aim of the programme is. We'll have a short time for questions, and we'll take a little screen break, and then we'll go into the more workshopy element of the session, which will be how to develop your application, some tips on bid writing, how to apply to the fund, and then more time for questions at the end. And then I think I've just got a quick intro to groundwork here. if that's okay. So, yes, so Groundwork, we are an environmental and social regeneration charity. We work closely with communities all over the UK, and we have three main goals in doing so: to create better spaces, promoting greener ways of living and working, and improving people's prospects. So, we support local communities and businesses and individuals to build their capacity and resilience in order to improve their environments. Specifically on the grants team, we have been running grant programs mostly across London, but over the UK for over 20 years. And a big part of what we do as well is co-design to make sure that the projects that we fund address the needs of the communities that they are working with and for. So that's a little bit more about us. And then I think we've got your next slide, Jed.
Thanks, Daniela. Yeah, I jumped ahead a bit, didn't I? But,
That's all right.
yeah, just to give a little overview on the project Groundwater. So it's a 6-year project. It's funded by DEFRA through the Environment Agency as part of the Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. And the basic principle of the overall programme is to, I guess it's a mix of delivering resilience on the ground, but trying new ideas and researching new ideas. And then the concept is that the outputs and the learning and the case studies and the policy change and so on that comes out of that program, which is a total of 30 projects around the country, should be then used to really drive what the future of flood risk management is in the UK. So that's the concept of the program. We're one of those 30 projects, obviously looking at groundwater flooding. And yeah, our vision there is pretty ambitious. And I think it's based on a principle, a premise really, that groundwater flooding in comparison to other sources of flooding, such as fluvial, surface water and coastal flooding, it's not as well dealt with. There's like the levels of investment are lower, the understanding's lower, the awareness is generally lower, and like the thoughts of what can you do about it, it's all pretty limited. So in some ways, we're starting from quite a low bar of groundwater flooding. Obviously, groundwater flooding doesn't usually occur on its own in isolation. It's usually combined with other sources. And I think we try to recognise that in how we've set this innovation fund up. That if the bids are, I don't know, for example, doing sustainable drainage, so water butts, rain gardens, that sort of thing, doesn't necessarily help with groundwater flooding directly, but obviously the interaction of surface water and groundwater flooding is it's a really common scenario and that's quite often when you get flooding. So we'll look favourably on those things in this as well. Yeah, go to the next slide, please.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's 9 pilot communities across 6 counties. Obviously, I know Paul's from Cheshire and David's here from Oxford. But yeah, that's just to give you a feel of the scale of where we're working in. We have to be pretty tight with how we use the resources we've got because we have to work only in those pilot communities. We selected them on a basis of trying to have a range of scenarios to demonstrate and trial ideas. So from more urban areas, so yeah, like Oxford, Luton, to more down to your small rural villages like Kimpton and ones down in the Pang Valley and Lambourne. And we've also got a mix of geologies. So you've got chalk-based areas through the Chilterns, and then some of the river gravels in some of the more arid areas as well. So that's kind of basis of how we come up with the 9. For some things, we are hoping to expand to other areas, but it's all contingent on me obtaining further funding. But at the moment, the indications are good that we might be able to get further funding. So that's something just to keep an ear out for in the future with us.
Nice.
Next slide.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is just to give a feel for the scale of what we're doing, really. So this isn't all the partners, but I think we're up to 37 at last count. So both in terms of the people who are delivering the work for us and people who are working alongside us as well. So we've got a range of consultancies. A lot of what we do is through consultants, where we're looking at developing new ideas and so on. We've also got several universities working with us. British Geological Survey, quite a key partner as well. And just to give you a feel for the things we're looking across the project, with some of the headlines are like, we're looking at how you monitor groundwater, how you model and map it. And in each of the areas we want to improve and try something new, that's the concept here. Then how you warn for it. So our flood warning system has gone live in the last couple of months. Then you've got what can you do about it as well. So like I say, we're doing nature-based solutions. We're looking at property flood resilience measures. We are looking at the planning system, which doesn't deal very well at all with groundwater flood risk. We're also looking at a kind of more esoteric concepts of like how you measure resilience, and then which is quite helpful in terms of an innovation project, in terms of how do you measure what you've tried and whether it's been successful or not. So that there's quite a lot going on. We've got a lot of information on the website, and we have newsletters and so on. If you do want to sign up for those, please do. The other good place for information, I'd say, is LinkedIn. We're quite active on there as well. I think at this point, that's my little headlines of the project done.
Yes, perfect.
Done.
Thank you, Jed. So yeah, I mean, we've kind of touched upon Project Groundwater. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more, I suppose, about this specific innovation fund angle. So this funding scheme aims to support local organisations and individuals in these kind of 9 pilot communities that Jed mentioned. We will list those again later on as well. So yes, the fund hopes to enable local community organisations to access funding, projects that will encourage using the grassroots knowledge that they have on the ground to drive solutions for managing groundwater flooding. So, as well as addressing groundwater flooding issues directly, the fund also aims to increase engagement with different communities to try and improve and build up people's general understanding and awareness of groundwater flooding. As Jed said, it's mostly less understood, and there's less known about it as a type of flooding. We want to ensure that the outcomes align with the specific needs of these different communities as well. Great. Jed, did you want to jump back in on this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is just really to give some examples of the kind of things it could fund. This is not an exclusive list. Totally open to other ideas beyond this, but these are, I guess, when we were thinking about it, some of the things we've seen done in other areas that we think could work here. Sustainable drainage systems, that's quite a broad term, but basically refers to anything that helps slow the flow of water. So when it rains, in principle, that's what we're talking about there. Which could be anything from rain gardens, water butts. There's a whole host of things that you could do around that. Natural flow management techniques, again, quite broad, how you might approach that. So we're looking at that on the project. And I guess that's one point I might make as well, is that we would be really willing to work with people in partnership on any ideas. So it may be you don't need help or support from us, but did mention, let's line with all the partners I've got access to a lot of expertise in all areas really across flood risk management. So if you did need doors opening, or you wanted specific partners or advice or technical input, we can help with that. So don't want you to feel you have to provide everything in your bid. If you think it needs a partner bringing in to work with you and help with some of the technical stuff, then we're really willing to do that with you. What else we got? Yeah, water storage infiltration, that's kind of similar thing. Planting trees, again, this is all about slowing the flow, isn't it? And but also the wider benefits. We mentioned biodiversity there. It's not it's an innovation fund for flooding. A lot of what we're doing on the project is trying to look at the bigger picture. So this is well known when you put in sustainable drainage and natural flood management. There's more benefits than just flooding, right? There's the ecological benefits in particular, but it can be recreational benefits. People can make better use of river or public spaces and so on. This is that whole picture stuff is really important to us. Yeah, educational campaigns and workshops, again, just ideas we've had of things that we think would be really good to do. And yeah, kind of maintenance monitoring driven by the community. So yeah, I know people have already asked about whether they could do monitoring systems to really increase the awareness of what the groundwater is doing. Quite usually you're limited to the odd borehole here and there, and we're quite aware there's quite a lot of new technology, a lot cheaper than installing a £30,000 borehole, or well, even cheap boreholes. But so yeah, so we're all these ideas, non-exclusive list, but just some thoughts really to help with the thinking process.
Perfect.
It's me as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is perhaps building a bit on my point about it being more than just flooding, that we'd like it to, you know, I think recognize generally anything you do in this sphere is going to have these wider benefits. So it's just really drawing them out in your application. I think this is the point we're trying to make here, you know, that if you're doing this stuff on, you know, if you're putting in, for example, we're hoping to in Chesham to put in some rain gardens and tree pits and so on in the town centre, hopefully this year. Actually, you know, the benefit of doing that is that, you know, we'll be able to put up some signage to explain what it is, why we put it in, what's the benefit of doing this, why, you know, why it's important to try and slow the flow when it rains and so on. So that's the kind of extra benefit you get from doing this. And you know, who I've seen in other places, for example, rain gardens become owned by the community and looked after by the community. So it's can you build in that kind of local ownership as part of it? And as you know, and we're always really supportive of partnership and collaboration on this as well. So if you're able to bring in other partners or other local groups to work with you, or local council, or whoever it is, again, that'd be a real strengthening factor to any bid that you can put in.
Great, thank you. Yes, so who will it fund? So as we've mentioned, there are 9 key pilot communities across the Chiltern Hills and Berkshire Downs that focuses on, it's listed here on the left. So the fund will support projects that occur in at least one of these key areas. And then on the right here, we have listed the organisation types that can apply. I won't read them all out, but this is the list, and I'm just going to highlight one of these, which is the informal or unconstituted groups. So these might be community groups of more than one person who meet regularly, but aren't formally arranged or constituted or registered on Companies House or anything like that, but still put a lot of energy and enthusiasm into their work. So if you are interested in applying as an informal or non-constituted group, we just ask that you provide a reference in your application. So someone who can vouch for the work that you do in your local community. So for example, local councillors or an organisation that you've worked with before. Another thing to stipulate is that you will need to have access to a bank account with at least 2 signatories, which you may not have if you're an individual or an informal non-constituted group. But in that case, you are able to partner. We spoke about partnerships before and their different values. If you can partner with an organisation who can hold the grant money for you, that's the main thing. The only thing is that we can't transfer grant monies to a personal bank account. There has to be a formal registered charity or business account. This partner organisation could also assist with your delivery and your planning, or it could just be that they're going to hold the monies for you. That's absolutely fine. And we're open to different types of collaboration and partnership working on that front. Great. So what types of funding are available? So we are offering 2 different tiers of grants. We have standard grants, which are £5,000 to £10,000. And then we have flagship grants, which are £10,001 to £20,000 for larger, more standout projects. And I suppose the main difference here is with the flagship project, this is referring to an initiative that is distinguished by a larger scale. There's a bigger sense of innovation or a bigger potential impact and ambition there. Another key factor might be that if your large flagship grant is looking to serve as a model or a kind of inspiration for other smaller groups, or if you're bringing smaller groups in and acting as a lead partner, and your reach is broader, then we would we have more money available in the pot to increase your potential. But that's not to say that we still don't want to fund smaller, localized, more targeted work with our standard grants as well. We're interested in seeing a variety, whatever works for your project idea. Okay, so eligible costs. This list is also available in our program prospectus, which is available on our website, which I will link to in the follow-up to this workshop. But yes, I wanted to highlight the different eligible costs that you can apply for funding for. So you can apply for quite a wide variety of items. We've tried not to be too prescriptive on this, such as materials, sessional workers, fees, plants, tools, storage, that kind of thing. And we've split this into three main areas. So capital, which is in relation to what you physically need in order to create your project. Revenue, so any costs that you need before any physical work takes place. Some examples are listed on the screen here. And ancillary costs, which are costs that might not be necessarily essential or directly linked to your project, but will help to make it more successful. What we've also done quite purposely is we've not given any recommended percentage breakdown of how these three categories should make up your total bid. We want to be open to the project that you have, the idea and your needs. But what is key here is that you're showing us value for money, showing that you've researched any viable options and you've selected the best option for you that you need for your project. We will touch on some more budgeting information as well a little bit later on in the presentation. Great. So we've got a little break now and we've got time for questions as well. So if you would like to unmute yourself and ask any questions or put any questions in the chat, please do so now. We're happy to take them. Let me get the chat open so I can see it actually. Hello, David. Your hand is raised.
Hi.
Hi.
I feel like I might be the only person that's asking
No, that's okay.
questions.
I've just seen Paul saying he's here but not active, which is fine
Yes.
as well. So you've got our full attention.
I feel a bit of pressure here.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think it's, the guidance is all, from my perspective, is all pretty clear.
Yeah.
There was something that you touched on sort of briefly, which is a slight issue for us. So I'd be working as part of the South Oxford Flood Action Group, which is in its early days, so it's not constituted a group as yet. So the question of working with an organization that can hold the money is
Yeah.
one for us. Just the question was around how active that partner would need to be in the project.
Hmm.
Do they, we would like to have somebody who is active, but if
For sure.
if it ended up being just an organization whose kind of almost sole aim is to hold the money, is that okay?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. We've had that on other programs before. They can be as involved as they are able to be, and it feels appropriate to be for your work.
Okay, that's good. Um, the other question I had was just whether uh, are you looking to cover all to have one project in all 9 case study areas, or could you have multiple from one and none from the other? Is there an aspiration that you've got there?
I'll let Jed take this one.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
We haven't divided the funding up. It's just a pot that's there. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want it all spent in one community. We want some degree of spread, but we haven't said, oh, we want one in each community or anything. I'd be surprised if we get bids from all 9 communities, to be honest, but we'll
Yeah.
see. So yeah, there's a guidance on that. I think there's going to be like a scoring process on the bids, which we would hope would be. I mean, scoring is a subjective process itself, but there's
Yeah.
it's to try and there'll be a panel making those decisions. So hopefully, we'll try to be as fair as we can make it.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a balancing act with depending on what applications we get, which we don't really know until it's happened. But Like Jed said, trying to get that spread would be good if we can.
Okay, good. And just one final one before I see Paul's got his hand up. In terms of monitoring and evaluation,
Mm,
you mentioned that in the prospectus. Are you thinking that there would be regular meetings between the project team
mm,
and either Groundworks or Project Groundwater
mhm,
or both, or is that something you would
mm.
require or
Yeah, so as quite standard on our grant programs, we will have a mid-project check-in point, and this will normally be a call, a phone call, or a video call, where we just get an update on how the project is going, and we ask set questions on updates if there's been any challenges, if you foresee any changes to your original plan, if we can help in any way, and then normally it is a um, end project report that you will submit once your project is completed. And this will be a written report with questions asked about your impact figures, your learnings from the process, whether you spent the money as you intended, if there were any changes. Yes, but along that journey, we are available for support if you have questions and queries. But those are the two kind of key milestone points of reporting for us.
and in terms of the things that you've just outlined there,
Mm.
that will be available kind of for those near the start of the projects, because I'm thinking that some of
Yes.
that evidence that you're looking for would need to be planned into the
Yes. Appreciate you kind of need some time to build that into the project and forethink it,
yeah.
which, yes, would be
Uh,
available.
there might be a cost associated with that perhaps that would need to be included in the budget. So
There could be, so it could come under your staff costs. So part of your staff's costs could be a certain amount of hours in order to complete monitoring and evaluation, for example.
yeah, okay, right, that's me. Thanks.
That's all right. Paul, did you have your hand raised as well?
Yeah, I did, and I'm not going to put the camera on because we've got mayhem going on in the background.
That's okay.
I've got five grandchildren buzzing around.
Oh, brilliant.
Just a quick question: would you be looking at something which I would class as like first phase of a project? Because we've got a number of initiatives working on the chest at the moment. We've got the smarter water catchment, and we've got the FDRI team as well working on the project, and they are looking for these types of projects, groundwater. I mean, it is about flood and drought. So in our catchment, they're looking at longer term projects, and I could see this quite easily fitting in the two projects we've got in mind at the moment, because we are working on two applications are in Chesham, and they would fit in quite well with what the longer term aims are of FDRI, because they want some projects as well. But could we look at this as part of a phased approach?
Yes, I believe so. I think I'll let Jed answer on this too, but something that we would be interested in your application is hearing about what your plans for sustainability were. So I think we definitely be interested in if this was an initial pilot scheme. This is a good place to try it because we're looking for innovation. And then if you have further funding in mind to apply for example, or match funding in place, that's something we'd also be interested in hearing about. But appreciate that this pot of funding is finite, but your ambitions for project work go on beyond it, and we want to help set that work up. Yes.
Okay, good. And then it comes down to the sort of level of data that you need to demonstrate that we have an understanding, a strong understanding of the issues that we're facing. What sort of level of data are you looking for?
Yeah, maybe Jed could take this
Yeah, I don't think it's massive for this. For what we need to make a decision on this. And I'm pretty aware of the level of data and understanding that there is on the chess in particular. It's probably one of the highest levels of data available in the country. I mean, that's why it's such focus on it sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I think you can probably just link to some of the well-known data sources and so on. Because although I'm going to be one of the people on the panel, but I know some of the other people on the panel won't be as clued up about. I'll be the kind of technical person on the panel, so I might have that background, but the others probably won't. So I just guess giving that context in terms of what the data and level of knowledge and understanding in the catchment is probably all you need to do, rather than laying it all out in detail.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go on mute again just to save you from this mayhem.
That's okay. There was no background noise for me, so not to worry, Paul. Great. Okay, so I think let's now just take a little 5-minute screen break, and we will come back at 4:10, if that's okay with everybody. And I'll put that in the chat as well. Hello, everybody. I don't know if we're back yet, but I will give it a few moments just in case. I can see some cameras on. Hi. Just give it a minute for people. I always feel like I work in a call center when I wear one of these head things, / like Britney Spears, but not Britney Spears. Okay, I'm going to assume we're potentially all back, so let's crack on. So my screen. Great, so we're moving into the more workshopped element of the session, where we're going to go over some tips for writing an application as well as how to apply to this fund. So first of all, for a little bit of interaction, what is a project? Please unmute yourself or type in the chat what different things or what different features traditionally make up a project of work. Throw your ideas out at me, please.
Something that sort of provides a result for maybe a community or individuals.
Yes, definitely a tangible goal is key.
It's something to bring change and improvement.
Yeah. But he walked in and the water just
Yes.
went over the top into his Wellington.
Can I ask a quick question? If I
Yeah.
press the heart react, will that be a hand, or will I push a heart?
Try it.
I think it will do a heart.
Okay. How do you do a raise hand in Zoom? Just if I have to raise my hand.
I think there is
instead
a
of
separate
interrupting.
raise hand feature, but
Okay.
It's under the heart, yeah.
Is it under the heart? Okay. Because if I do, I'm going to press the heart. Oh yes, it is. Okay, thank you.
you could do
I
a
was
little
worried
heart
I'd
if you
end up,
want.
hearting everybody.
That's
It's
okay.
fine. Okay.
No problem.
Back to the subject.
Well, good. Yes, so in terms of what makes up a project, these are the key areas to think about before starting your application. In our opinion, these are the key frameworks that make up a project. So first of all, you will have a time frame. So we will be interested in knowing when your project will start and end, when you hope to spend the money by. What's the time period that you need in order to ensure the funding has its best possible impact, and is it within the time frame of spending so that you are completed by the time this program comes to an end? Secondly, need. So why do you need this funding? Tell us what it's for. Is it a new idea, or is it an ongoing service that you provide that you want to trial a new element of or develop in some way? How will this project help to grow your organization and help you perhaps prevent and respond to groundwater flooding specifically? Can you evidence this need? Show us what this need is in your community. Thirdly, aims and objectives. So this will be connected to what your need is and to the people you're supporting. What we like to see is specific and clear aims, objectives, and outcomes. On to the next point, which is outputs and outcomes. So your outputs are what you will do, so whatever your project idea is. And then your outcomes are what will the impact be, what you hope that the end result will be as a result of your project having completed. Now we have measurability, if that's a word, measurability. Be measurable. So in order to track your outputs and your outcomes, you need to have appropriate measurement systems in place. So we encourage you to consider this as a factor when developing your project. So for example, are you going to have feedback sessions with your beneficiaries to collect their input on how their knowledge of groundwater flooding has changed from the beginning of your project to the end of your project? So we're interested in knowing how you're going to collect and measure this data. And then lastly, but importantly, have a budget. We like realistic, clear, and specific budgets. We like to see that you've done your research of how much things are going to cost. Do you know exactly what you need the money for? And have you accounted for everything to deliver your project as a whole? So another way of thinking about this is simply who, what, when, why, where, and how. And hopefully we've designed the application form so that the questions prompt these responses from you. So we encourage you to think about these elements of your project before you start applying. If you can answer them all, then great, you're ready to start your application. So next up, what are funders looking for? This is a broad question, but from your experience, perhaps before applying to funding, what do you think would make a strong application and one that a funder couldn't deny? Again, feel free to shout out or put in the chat.
Well, I think demand is important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But you've already emphasized that.
Demand or need, yes, definitely.
I guess under demand, it's also, I guess, helping, the wider, in our situation, helping the wider community going
Yes.
then and going forward.
Yes, what's going to be that wider community ripple and impact? Always put examples, I think, in the chat there of existing issues. Yes, so providing tangible examples of issues that you're aware of and how your project is going to address that. Definitely. Great. So here are 4 key areas that we will be looking for in your application. So firstly, probably, hopefully not too obviously, but funding criteria. Make sure your project clearly meets our criteria and the aims that we've laid out. So we encourage you to read through the guidance materials available on our website. We have a program prospectus that outlines all of the details in this workshop and more, as well as a downloadable application form so you can see all of the questions in advance. Secondly, identified need. We've spoken about this a lot. So it's important that you have shown us that you've researched the area you're looking to deliver in order to establish what the need is. It's likely that you may already know lots about this area or this community or this problem that you're addressing. But what is really key is showing someone who is reading your application who may have no prior knowledge of the specific issue, as Jed has mentioned, to give us an idea of what the demand is for the project and understand how you're going to address it. So budget, we've spoken about this before, but we want accurate and realistic budgets, and we want to see good value for money. Think about how many participants you want to reach and how intense your project is. And something that we also want to highlight is value for money doesn't always necessarily mean the cheapest thing, but we want to show that you are providing a service that is best suited to the work that you want to do. So show us that you've researched alternative options for equipment, for example, and that you found the best one for your project. And then lastly, is it a clear ask? So can you clearly communicate what you need and why? We also encourage you to think about how you're laying things out in the application form. If it's useful for you to use bullet points, then it's probably useful for us to read through your bullet points if it's going to help make your application more concise and clear to us. Okay, great. So now I've just got some top tips for bid writing up here. So firstly, clear description, have a clear outline of what your project is. The application will ask you this pretty early on as well. I've touched upon this, but assume we don't know anything about your subject matter and educate us on it. We're not looking for masses of information, but we want to feel confident that you are experts in the specific area that you're working in groundwater flooding and resilience to that. Please don't use any jargon. Use plain, succinct, and simple language in light of us perhaps not knowing what the jargon is referring to. Pick out keywords in questions which we want to see you answer. Try and use the language in the application form to help you answer the questions and stick to the question being asked as well. I've mentioned this before, but read any guidelines in advance and try and get in touch with us if you have any questions on that as well. And on the right here, we've got a few more. So try and use positive statements in your application rather than negative words or weaker words. So we hope is not as strong as we will. We want to read your application and believe that you are going to achieve your project successfully. Clear layout, so think about your audience. Again, if it's beneficial for you to use headings or bullet points in your application, I'm sure it will only make it easier for us to read as well. Try and remove any redundant words. So the questions in the application will have word limits. Every word is important. Try and be as clear and concise as possible. Draft a detailed budget based on calculated figures that you can show to us, and only apply for as much as you need. If you don't need to apply for the maximum amount, then that's great. We want to see that you've calculated each cost and that the ask of the amount you're asking for correlates to that. If you can, read your application out loud or to somebody else. It just helps you to make sure that it makes sense, and it can easily highlight any mistakes that can be quickly fixed. And in light of that, allow yourself time to proofread. If you can get someone else to proofread your answers for you, it's always useful to get a fresh pair of eyes on it, because I know what it's like when you're filling out an application and you feel like you've been staring at the same words for hours. So sometimes giving yourself time and space away from it, returning to it to proofread, can be very beneficial. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the chat as well. Pictures and diagrams. Who will cover the insurance? Yes, key things to ask. Okay, great. So I'm now going to move on to the final part of the workshop, which is how to apply to the fund. So on the next few slides, I've got some screenshots of the application portal and the application process. I'll take you through it step by step to hopefully give you an idea of what to expect when you start your application. Great, so you will start off on the Groundwork South website or the Project Groundwater website, and then you will hit the Project Groundwater Innovation Fund page. This is just a screenshot of the top of the page so you can see what it looks like here. And then if you scroll down to this section, it says how to apply. Here you can find the resources that I've mentioned before. So in the yellow rectangular box, it says application guidance. This is a Word document, downloadable version of the application form, which we encourage you to look at in advance. Also, if we've made this a Word document, so if you want to save this on your desktop computer or your laptop and start writing the application on that before you apply and transfer it to our website portal, then we encourage you to do that as well. The application guidance document also has bespoke guidance for each question to give you some tips on what we're looking for from each section of the form. So once you've done all that and you've read it and you're ready to go, you click here where it says in red, check eligibility and apply for the Innovation Fund. And when you click there, you will be taken to an eligibility checker questionnaire. This is just a very brief form which will determine whether or not your organisation is eligible for this grant. I think there's like 5 questions and it's just basic criteria of what you're applying for. If you're not eligible for whatever reason, you'll be notified straight after a question. If you are eligible, then you'll get to the end of the form and it will look like this. And then you can click here to go to the application form and it will take you to the web portal where you will apply. Great, so this is what you will see the first time you click to apply. This is the login page for our application portal. There's just a few things that I think are important to point out here. So our application portal is compatible with most web browsers, but it's not compatible, unfortunately, with Safari. So you can use Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, but please don't try and use Safari because some of the features, unfortunately, don't work on it. We also encourage you to use a computer or a laptop rather than a phone or a tablet, as some of the functions might not work because of the smaller screen size. So when you save or you submit your application, you will receive confirmation emails from our automated system. And the email address for that is mail@grantapplication.com. You might see it in the middle kind of here of this red box. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, your spam filter will pick this up and it will be sent straight to your spam folder in your inbox. So if you're not receiving confirmation emails every time you save your application form, please check your spam folder. They may be there, but they're just being filtered out by your email provider. Great. So to start an application, if you've applied to a Groundwork grant before, you can log in with the same details that you had. This will link your existing information to what we have on our system already for you. If you've applied to a groundwork grant before, but you've forgotten your login details, that's totally fine. You can click on the right here where it says forgot your password, and it will prompt you to reset your password. And thirdly, if you've never applied for a groundwork grant before, then that's also great. You can just click new applicant. It's circled in red here on the screen at the bottom, and then you will create an account for the first time. Great. So once you've created an account, you will be taken straight to the application form on the portal. This is what it will look like. There's a few important things to note here as well about the form itself. So please always use the next button at the bottom of each page, or navigate through the form with the green tabs along the middle here. You'll see they're kind of green rectangles. This is the best way to work through the form, as sometimes the backward and forward buttons on your browser might not allow you to save your work as you go. So always click the next button or use these green tabs here. Some of the questions in the form are required, and they have that little red cross next to them. You must answer these questions in order to submit your application form. Not all of the questions are required, just the important ones like the contact information. We really do encourage you to save the form frequently in order to avoid losing your work using the save button, which is also at the bottom of the page. It's really crucial to do this frequently because, unfortunately, the system automatically logs you out after 90 minutes of inactivity. And if it does that, then your work won't be saved. So what I normally encourage people to do is, once you've hit the bottom of each of these green tabs, just click save and finish, and then you will be able to return to your form and make sure that everything is saved properly. Great, so this is your dashboard. So this is what you will see every subsequent time that you log in after the first time. You can find your application by using the drop-down menu on the right here. You can see it's circled and it says in progress applications. Once you've submitted your application, you could click on this drop-down menu and it will be moved to a submitted applications folder. So that's where it will live. You can access it after you've submitted it as well. And then in order to access your application that you've already started, you can click on the blue text here, Project Groundwater Application, and it will allow you to continue working on your application form. Another quite useful feature is you can send yourself a copy of your application at any time using the little email icon just under action here, if that is useful for you. Okay, so just jumping back to the application form, this is now the end of the form, so you can see I'm in the review my application section here, circled on the right. This is the final page that you'll see once you get to the end, where you can review your answers. You won't, as I said, you won't be able to submit until you've answered all of the required questions. So what I've done here is I've purposefully not answered any of the required questions. So you can see this big bit of red text at the top here. That will tell you what you may have accidentally missed, and then you can go back to that relevant question and fill it out. If you have any issues locating the questions that are missing, then just get in touch with us, but they should be in chronological order as well. Great. And then this is the very bottom of the last page of the form. So once you finalize your application, you filled in all of the answers, you scroll down to the bottom and you can press update, which is circled, and then you can press submit. And once the form is submitted, it is sent to us, and you can't make any changes once it is submitted. But you will be emailed a copy of your application form. So upon receiving this email, once you've submitted it, if you realize that you've made a mistake, then there's no need to worry. You can just email us and tell us what the error is. Like if you've forgotten to attach a document, for example, if you email it over, then we can make the changes on our end. But once it is submitted, you won't be able to change it on your end. I can just see some messages in the chat. I'm just going to take a look. Can you change the date to be in UK format to avoid confusion? Great question. I will look into this. I think some of the features of the portal we can't control ourselves, but I can ask Blackboard managing software if they can change the formatting. Yes, absolutely. That's the only question I think for now. But thank you for raising that, David. And then I just have some FAQs up here from common questions that we get about the application form and process. So I started my application form and now it's gone missing. Where is it? So 9 times out of 10, this will be the system has automatically timed you out after 90 minutes after your last activity. So this is why we really drill home, save your application as often as you can. Because if you've not clicked save, then you any work that you made in between your last save will be lost, unfortunately. Will I get a copy of my form once I filled it out? Yes, as I mentioned, once the application form has been completed and sent to us, a copy will be sent to your email address. Some parts of the application form aren't working. This is normally a web browser problem if you're using Safari. Sometimes there can also be a clear your cookies problem. I don't really know what cookies are on web browsers, but sometimes if you clear your cookies, then the functionality of the form will work properly again. Can I submit through a Word document or PDF via email? Unfortunately not. We need all applications to be completed in our portal in order to process your application, as well as for the due diligence checks that we do on our end, and as well to make payments if you are successful. I got a message saying invalid email or password. So this is often if you try to set up a new account and you're receiving this message, it means an email address potentially already exists with linked to an account. So in that case, you just need to return to the login page and click forgot password and try resetting it. Once you've logged into your account, you can use the change my email or change my password setting in order to get that updated to the latest version for you. Will you ask more information after this application form? Yes, as I mentioned briefly, we will do some due diligence on our end if you are successful. This will need to be submitted via your online account through a requirement form, which is again why we're kind of set up on this system specifically. And finally, I'm not computer literate. Can you help? Yes, of course. We can provide support for people who are having technical difficulties or are not computer literate and require further help. Just get in touch with us and we can set up some time to help you fill out the application form itself. Fiona, you have your hand up. Hello.
I figured it out. I think you kind of answered this question, but when I was, I did ask Jamie, he might have reached out to you, but as I'm here, can you start your application? And as long as you're saving, could you then come out and go back into it? It looks like you can with the logging in and the down now that I've seen all that, but I just want to make sure. So someone might start it, as long as they keep saving, they won't lose.
Yes, you can complete it over whatever time frame you need and want to. And then every time you complete a section and you save and close it, you'll be logged out. You'll receive an email, which will have like an update of the changes that you've made. And then within that email, you will have a link to log back in again. And you'll pick up wherever you left off. It kind of saves your place that you've been in.
Okay. Just quickly though, if you were filling in something, you save the page, then you go to the next one, you save the page, you go, and then you go like, oh, I've got to go and pick the kids up, save it,
that's fine.
close out, then you can, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes, and then you can come back to it another time and the work that you've done and saved every time will be there.
Okay.
Before you submit it.
As long as you say you're okay.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Great, that's pretty much it. So next steps, as I mentioned, resources are available on the website for you to read, watch. We will upload a recording of this if you want to pass it on to other people, if you want to look back at it and download and access. Please make sure you read the application guidelines, as we've mentioned. And yes, applications are open. The application deadline is 9 a.m. the 17th of March, 2025. So have that date in your calendars. And then finally, happy to take any other questions, but also make a note of our contact details. We can provide support over phone call, via email, over a video call if you're having problems accessing the application form for any reason. Normally the easiest way to fix it is to just jump on a call, share a screen, and we can get to the bottom of it with you. But yes, are there any other questions? Yes, hello. Hands are raised. Yeah. I can't see the order, but I'm going to trust you to pick.
You go, David.
Thanks. Oh, just trying to put my video on. So I didn't see anything on the form, but maybe I'm missing it in relation to track record of the organizations applying. Is that something that you would take into consideration when looking at the applications?
Do you mean by track record, do you mean like previous funding that you've received, or?
Yes, or work that you've done within the
So
area.
we don't explicitly ask that question, no, you are right. But I suppose if it felt like it was going to add value and weight to your application, it's good to include some context of this is what we've done before, this was successful, we want to do this time, then that's okay.
Okay. And there's nothing I could see about sort of how the project would be managed, who would have the responsibilities for different aspects of it.
Yeah, we don't ask for a specific kind of role breakdown. But I suppose if you wanted to provide that information, you could provide that in an attached document. We'd also be looking for in your budget if you have like an assigned project manager or project coordinator, or volunteers, or some indication of who is going to be delivering the work is useful for us to have.
Okay. And you mentioned there about attaching things that
Mhm.
documents. Is that
Yeah.
is that clear where that
Yeah, that's at the
maybe you've
very
covered it?
just before the very end of the form. There's the option to add in any attachments that you feel like will add weight to the application, or if you want to reference something in the bulk of the application and attach it as a document, then you can do that.
Okay, great, thank you.
No worries, thank you. Who's next?
Do you want to go, Thea?
Sure, I was just going to, I think Paul was asking about insurance. He said, who will cover the insurance? I'm assuming if it's needed for the projects that they're working on. Do you know how that would work? That might be a Jed.
Yeah,
I don't know.
might be a Jed question.
There is going to be like a grant agreement, isn't there? Maybe it's something to take away and have a look, because I think that it's covered in the grant agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I know for previous, I don't know if it will work differently on this specific fund, but if you need insurance to run your project, you can put that in as a cost, as in we will pay for the insurance for the time that the project runs. But I don't know if that would make it exceed the limit of the ask. So it's something we can look into and then firm up.
I mean, it's a good point, because if you're looking to do, he was talking about, is he talking about river restoration, or it's sort of, I think one of my communities are thinking of, maybe a planting activity to sort of slow the flow and all that. So yeah, it's a good point to consider. But I guess if you're allowed to get, I mean, just add it. Yeah, if you're allowed to have the insurance within that period of the work, then hopefully that would justify the budget and be part of the budget. Because I was going to ask. Oh, sorry, you just got another question, Thea.
No, that was I was just going to ask for
okay. Yeah. What happens if the project's less than 5,000? Does that matter? Because it seems like it's 5,000 to 10, and then 10,001 to. I mean, I'm not saying that it will be that way, but is it a problem if it is actually less than £5,000?
It's a good question, and I would say historically we've set the minimum amount to be 5,000 just because of the scale of impact that we're hoping to achieve. We're trying to encourage a level of engagement that would fall within that bracket. Yeah, I don't know, Jed, if you have a hard and fast feeling about that, or if we're willing to be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I think those ranges were indicative, weren't they? As a suggestion, that's the kind of scale we were thinking.
Yeah.
With the total amount of the fund being 100K, that's the kind of context. But I think if it's under, we're not going to say, oh, you can't. We're not considering that. You haven't paid. You're not spending enough money. I think it definitely still would be considered alongside everything else.
I'm only asking because obviously, like Jed said earlier, we're keen for various people to apply, within the community. Obviously, it's quite a tight time schedule for some people that have never done this before. So there, in some ways, some people already have ideas because they're working on projects already, but other people are really bringing something new to the table for themselves and haven't had that sort of time to fully conceptualize something bigger and greater, I suppose, possibly. Because this is obviously a new thing that we're doing here, and we're going to learn from it as well, I suppose, and see how it goes. And for a lot of people, that it will be a new thing for them as well to be applying for something and filling in this kind of thing. So I really want to encourage people to apply, but I don't want to put any pressure on them in terms of what they have to. You've given, like you said earlier on, you've talked about there's a lot of range to what they can apply for in this fund. So you don't want to stop people from having a go, do you?
Exactly. No, and that's what we want, is for people to have a go. That's the concept of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Good point. Thank you, Fiona. Someone else have their hand up briefly, or David?
I just wanted to kind of do an advert for Hinksey Park. I mean, we've got our ideas of what we want to do, and it's a kind of around the monitoring and the kind of involvement of community. We're on the floodplain of the River Thames, so we've got the kind of permeable superficial deposit groundwater flooding. But just to say, if there are other projects that, well, within Hinksey Park that we don't know about, we're here and would be happy to sort of talk about potentially coming together to make a sort of slightly bigger project, or if there are innovations in other catchments that case study areas that people think might be applicable and it might help to incorporate us. So we're kind of here, and obviously there isn't a huge amount of time, but if people want to make contact, then we would be happy to talk. So I'm not quite sure how you make my contact details available, but I would be happy to if there's some way of doing that. I'm thinking I'm talking to the people who are watching this recorded because I know.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I'm sure if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, David, they can contact us and we can.
Yeah.
We can
Pass them on.
Great.
Nice. Great. Any more for any more?
Sorry, just a quick thing, Danielle.
Yeah.
So you're going to send us the slides, are you? Then I can forward
Yeah.
them to my.
I'll send the slides before the end of this week, and then we will pull the recording and figure out a platform to hold it on. I think there's YouTube channels we can upload to, and then perhaps put the link on our website as well, so you can direct people to that. Great. Okay. That's all. I'm going to stop the recording.